All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to appreciate and thank everybody for coming out to see us on wrapping up towards the last day at 2:30. So this is a somewhat of a follow-on conversation to our talk that we presented last year. This, as you can see, we're 12 months into GoLive, and we're going to talk about kind of our journey and telling our value proposition and moving forward there. So my name is Matt Connors. I'm the former Chief Information Security Officer and VP of Architecture and Data for Southern New Hampshire University.
I'm Kevin Leggett. I run the IAM program at Southern New Hampshire. So I want to give a background. As Matt mentioned, we were here a year ago, and at that point, we were just about to go live with our consumer IAM solution when it comes to our applicant portal. But a little background on Southern New Hampshire, for those of you who do not know. Southern New Hampshire University is one of, if not the largest online universities, nonprofit universities in the world. We're basically the Southwest Airlines of higher ed. We really should change our names, but it's too late. Everybody knows us as this. So we have we're about volume, right? So we have currently 225,000 now active students, right? Big population. We do have a campus in New Hampshire, roughly 3,000 to 4,000 students, but you know, our primary focus is online. We are in a tremendous growth rate. We have added roughly 24,000 new students, new customers in our last term alone. So we are growing. We're static on our tuition. We really haven't increased tuition at all in 10 years. So what does that mean for us? We're really about value, right? So whenever we're looking to do something, we want to make sure there's value in it, and the ROI is very, very important for us, which we'll get into about the results of what's occurred with our solution over the last 12 months. You know, the volume is where we're really at, but it's quality. And what I mean by that, the product we provide is quality, but again, the volume is something that is really significant for us. My responsibilities at Southern New Hampshire cover the workforce as well as the consumer side, the customer side.
So in terms of value, you know, things that we used to tell in terms of a traditional story, you know, you see this as a CISO, this is a fairly common value statement to make. You know, there's the likelihood of that bad thing happening, and then the cost if that bad thing happens, and this is the cost avoidance statement that I'm going to give to my CFO, our president, and our leadership team. You know, I would say, as much as it's an argument and a case that you should be willing to make, really it's about translating things to revenue and actual business outcomes. But again, you should be able to answer this question, but I think you'll see these types of calculations really trying to become more table stakes answers than particular drivers as to why this project should be funded over the next one. You know, obviously wanting to drive everything down there in that space, which is something that we did achieve, which we'll talk about in a second. You know, another fairly standard one is kind of your quote-unquote efficiency gain instead of risk reduction. Number of hours you spend doing something manually that you can now automate. You know, in theory, you have some level of cost avoidance or cost reduction there, depending on how you approach your labor costs. You know, your CFO is always going to push you on this one pretty hard, because unless you cut a person, are you really saving anything? And, you know, you can talk about, you know, you never really staff to a certain point to deliver whatever, you know, 5, 6, 10 projects are next in the pipeline. But as we take a look back as to where we were, we want to talk to you kind of about changing the narrative. So how do we measure the return on investment for our customer journey? You know, initially it was about, you know, we reduce fraud, we reduce those account takeovers, customer support costs, product licensing, all those traditional kind of like cyber and IT type value statements to make. And those are all good, again, still good things for you to know. But I think the thing that's going to set your project, your story apart from the other guy, you know, your partner or peer next to you, is really saying like, hey, we're going to actually make business outcomes. So as Kevin was saying, value is important, but revenue and rates, those are important. So we said, you know what, we can make a commitment to changing and upping our conversion rates and improving our customer satisfaction. And that's something that we achieved by transforming this journey. Kevin's actually going to walk you through that journey right now.
So, in higher education, there's a relationship with the customer. that customer goes through various scenarios, but from a higher ed perspective, even though we're online, pretty standard, right? We have prospects, we have applicants, we have admitted. We go through this journey, and this journey has various stages, right? That we want to bring that customer, right, closer and closer and closer to the institution, right? So, like in most consumer IM experiences, the focus has to be on the experience, right? While obviously making sure the security aspects are being covered, but you cannot impact or negatively impact the customer experience. So, we really, probably like a lot of schools, very disjointed when it came to that, right? We're focused on each individual stage as a separate silo, right? And as a result of that, the experience for the individual, right, going through that life cycle was not optimal. So the goal here is to really, start that relationship, build on the relationship, mature the relationship. So that is what this is about. We're making sure that we have that, because again, as a customer, right, and that's kind of a word in higher education that's not really, positive, right? But the reality is they are customers, and they expect to be treated like customers. So it's very, very important that experience matches the concerns we have from a security side, but also continues down that as we mature the relationship. We want to keep the customer. So this is where the journey begins. Pretty simple. However, just to keep in mind, this identity really is the initial customer experience, right? If you don't get this right at the beginning, the experience isn't good, they're going to go somewhere else. It's as simple as that. Next slide. So this is a good example of somebody applying, providing some basic information. I think what's very important to realize of the solution that we provided here is, although it's an identity solution, right, we've ensured that you don't need the identity team to be the ones actually presenting this to the customers, right? So, the resources I have, as I mentioned before, are pretty finite. They're focused on workforce, they're focused on the customer, but I can't have it where those resources are not immediately and with some agility reacting to what marketing, for example, wants to do. So we're able to take this solution and allow non-IT professionals to present that information as necessary to ensure that we're covering both the experience, which they obviously have a lot of input into, and the security aspect, which we're concerned about.
Yep. So our experience actually used to dead end here, and the consumer who was interested in seeking information would have to wait to receive an invitation email from the IDP that we used to use. And we had fairly sizable, at least in our opinion now anyway, sizable abandonment rates at this point because it took the user out of the experience. If you think about a lot of people trying to seek out our institution, in some cases they're seeing the commercial wherever they're at, maybe it's late at night, the kids are in bed and they're trying to see what's next in life. And we want to keep them engaged in that interaction as much as possible, and having to click out, go somewhere else and wait for an email. It's a very disjointed experience. So when we made this transition, to the newer platform, which since we named the other one, I'll name this one, which was Stravosity. Our prior GoLive was 10 months, actually a little over, and this one was 10 weeks. We also were able to retire 80% of our custom code. So this is kind of the recap slide, if you will, that I promised you earlier that we talked about. So these were our initial wins. These were the out-of-the-gate wins for us. And we really are able to actually use everything you see highlighted there in the circle in terms of consent management, registration, self-service, adaptive access. So obviously we don't want to introduce friction this early in the customer engagement because, hey, I'm just interested in information. I want to know what degree I can get. I want to know what courses I can take. That is free information that we will give you all day long, anytime you want. Now, if we start getting into things like, I'm going to award you financial aid, which is a financial commitment that is issued on our CISO, maybe we do want to introduce some more friction as the risk, if you will, or the financial incentive increases. So how did it go? What happened? Where are we 12 months later? So login rates, they're up. So a login rate in this explicit definition, so this is internal definition, you can use whatever definitions you want, these are ours. These are the percentage of leads that log into the portal after signing up. So that's a 50% increase for us. So people, instead of, that abandoning having to wait for that email to show up, people are just continuing to engage with us because they can continue to engage in that active experience live. Did this change? There it did. There we go. Our applicant conversion rate up 13%. This is the big one because every head that converts from a lead to an applicant customer, those are the big wins, and that's always the hardest number for us to nudge. So a 13% improvement, which was drastic for us, and those conversions at the end of the day are roughly $6K ahead. So it's a pretty significant revenue gain for us, and that's every term, so that's not just annually. This slide always kind of confused me when I put it together, but all up, it's really a hard way to say. It's an 87% increase in our value proposition. So as Kevin mentioned, my peer in this journey has been our chief marketing officer. So as much as she cares about security, which she does, which is fantastic, she is also evaluated on the number of heads that convert, the number of people who come to the door, and then the number of people who eventually become paying students. So to see these types of improvements, she is a fan of CIAM for life. Like, this is her religion now. This is how we bring people to our organization. And having this buy-in, and as Kevin mentioned, the ability for her team to control certain aspects of the journey, be it consent management, content displayed on the page, what have you, without opening a ticket, without waiting for a next sprint cycle, for waiting for a release, they can do this and release on their own schedule live. This has been a huge win for the organization. Naturally, since this is, to an extent a cyber conference, we want to talk about some of those wins as well. We did have a 17.5% decrease in account takeovers. As you can imagine, at the volume that we're operating at, and because it's, to an extent kind of easy to sign up for this account, which is by design, those accounts can be used for abuse potentially fairly rapidly, depending on how they're permissioned. So we saw a 17.5% decrease in that, and that's primarily due to some it's inline evaluation of the data. So is this email address good? Is this phone number valid? Those types of things, instead of just just knocking down garbage data, which is also important for us because it means we're also saving in costs for outreach to those customers if they've selected a phone interaction. And then this is the big one. Because we use one of the big four firms for a lot of the dev work that we do, we were able to save $136K per month. That's an entire sprint team from the partner that we were using at the time. This was a big win that I got a lot of claps on the back of the board meeting for this one. This was a defining piece in addition to not only driving revenue up, but also driving costs down. So we went through that actually pretty quick. I'll leave it on the summary slide though. We're going to open it up for questions, experiences, whatever. So floor is yours. Yeah.
How did you measure your decrease in account takeovers?
Basically, when we snapped the line of launch date, that was the baseline. And it was a before and after, and I think we did 2 quarters. So 2 quarters preceding and 2 quarters after. Because we have what I would call an average, although to Kevin's point, it's an increasing number of accounts each term, but the percentage is relative depending on the quarter each side, 2 quarters each side of the deployment. Yeah.
What's the math on the increases?
136K? That's the cost for the sprint team per month.
Oh, that was the cost for
Yes, and we were able to get rid of that sprint team.
you had that permanently for...
Yes. They were dedicated just to maintaining that 80% code that we were able to get rid of. Because we transitioned our code from primarily our API model and doing logic within the API layer to transitioning to on platform that existed within the product, so I don't need to pay to do that anymore myself. Yes? Stravosity? Yes. I will tell you that there's going to probably be some Stravosity folks just outside of here after this, since the floor closed. If you want to talk with them after, I can point them out to you. That's no problem. Yeah. Yes. So we had several rigid aspects about this. First was our accessibility compliance. The page that was offered to us, we had to scrap because it didn't meet the WCAG standard that we needed to achieve, because accessibility is pretty important to us, obviously being a digital organization. And then the other piece was, if we wanted the user flow to work in a certain way, in some cases the Ping API, because of the amount of custom code we had to develop, the Ping API wouldn't, or the Ping platform wouldn't support the experience as we wanted it, so we had to dev it ourselves. So that's hence the term, I think we used rigid.
Being kind.
What do you reckon was the motivation behind the accountability from you?
Kevin, answer that one.
The motivation?
Yeah, I mean, like, what are they trying to get to? Is it courses? Is it access?
Well, as a university, one of the, a value proposition is to have a .edu identity of some type. A lot of vendors will actually provide you discounts, for example, because the assumption is that as a provider of that identity, that you've got your house in order and you validated these are valid members of the community, and as a result, discounts are provided. Now, obviously, we're looking to limit access to services that we're providing as well, but there's various reasons. Just the whole concept of volume, that member of communityship, what does that mean when it comes to vendor services? Not just what we provide, but other vendors do as well. So it's, yeah.
You used to also get, and it's not the case anymore, but you used to also get an email account right away. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And people would use it to fish us internally, steal the gal, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's relatively cheap and easy data harvesting, or was, I should say.
And
really.
and the volumes we're talking about, namespace, utilization, just trying to clean it up.
So it's a throwback to your talk last year, I suspect. Did you actually, when you did that in 10 weeks, did you have to migrate existing users into that system?
So we did that in line as part of the journey. So if we had an existing customer return to interact with us, they were migrated in line during the login process, and they didn't even know it.
Just in time, kind of.
Yep. Yeah, just in time transition, and then we had the option to do one for the laggards, but because we picked the 10-week period, and we did it during a term conversion for us, a term start, preceding and then 2 weeks after into a term start, we were able to get any active customers that were interacting with us at that time. And then anybody else just came back, just signed up like they normally would. Yep.
I guess along those lines, did you also have to migrate different applications onto the platform, or is it sort of like a single application? Is there different experiences? Actually,
Sure.
This is because is there going to be another talk 12 months from now, like next year, we're talking about like all of the different apps that you have to migrate and how that's gone over the years.
That's Kevin's roadmap for sure.
Yeah.
This environment is our web environment, our API and integrations environment, and then a Salesforce Community Cloud, which is also integrated with CRM. So it's today it's 4 platforms total.
Mm-hmm.
So each business in the school doesn't have like a different.
No, everybody goes to this. Sorry for the slide whiplash. Everybody goes to this page. This is the front door for the entire world. That's why at the end of everything says SNHU.edu on it, because that's where you go. And everybody, you want to be in person, online, whatever. Obviously, vast majority online for us. Everything comes through that Apply Now button, unless you use the traditional college application like a Common App or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yep. We use several layers for this. So this site has 2 Akamai bot subscriptions on it. It has a third-party bot subscription on it. And then some of the inline data validation that we do with Stravosity also knocks down bot stuff. So we get scores throughout. We give you a risk score. And eventually we'll get to the point where we actually probably knock you out based on that risk score. But we're working towards comfort in that risk score.
So, one of the things I didn't mention earlier is, Southern New Hampshire is a global institution, right? We realize we are a target. We're large. We advertise large. We're out there. As a result, we know we're a target. So.
One more. So you pulled up a couple like equations of like how we were able to pitch funding the product,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that's part of what you presented last year. Looking back on that, do you think that was the right approach, like driving, fraud and account takeovers down, and likelihood
Yep.
of that thing happening, blah, blah, theoretical
The-
cost. Was that the right approach?
To me, these are table stakes questions you should be able to answer for your, like, this is why this is a good idea. This gets you like in the door. This gets you to whatever planning committee you have. So we have a division planning committee, and then if it's, I think it's more than 4 organizations, we have to go to an additional planning committee. We're a large organization. We got a lot of committees. It's great. But one of the things that we do to differentiate ourselves, like this gets me past the IT. This gets me the CTO on board, the CIO on board, so on and so forth. These numbers, this is what gets our chief marketing officer and our CFO on board. And that's how I get that extra nudge, because the CIO is at that table, our chief operating officer is at that table. But when they get something out of it, it's easier for me to get money to complete this work, and it's easier to get this prioritized over other work.
I think it's an important fact that it's not just about cost reduction,
Yeah.
right? It's both aspects of it. It's about driving the marketing and getting those numbers up, as well as saving money. So again, back to the value proposition.
This is a revenue number. Like, revenue goes up 13%. We love that. And then, some of these other, like this, that's a cost reduction and a risk reduction.
Correlation between the CIAM that you're implementing and
Yep. Because we improved the experience, we made it safer and more profitable in one go. Yeah.
So you mentioned the scrub team is gone. As far as maintenance go for these two,
Mhm.
do you have any folks or did you contract with Stratasy?
So Stravosity offers a service that comes with it, and so they maintain like all that custom code that we sunset. We don't need it anymore because it lives on their platform. So when they do a code release, I get the code release. It's
All cloud.
yep, all cloud, individual tenant. Like, it's not multi-tenant, which is one of the challenges that we ran into with Ping. Like, we wanted, as an example, before we came up with the inline migration, we wanted to just migrate all the users wholesale. Can't do that because the hash that you have in Ping is the hash that everybody else has in Ping.
Also, we have certain dates that we are very sensitive about when it comes to our business cycle, term start,
Yep.
for example. So we want to have that flexibility to work around those dates.
All right, we got 3 minutes. We'll take a couple more. Yeah.
You mentioned flexibility with the earlier platform and flexibility with this new, especially with the user experience.
Yeah.
side of things. Can you talk a little bit more how flexible the user experience was?
Yeah, so the flexibility of the experience, in addition to also for us being able to free up our, what I would call our tried and true identity engineers, we can push experience changes to other groups like marketing, because the way it works, it's like click and drag. It's pretty straightforward. And then if we are looking for like, hey, I would love it if this button did this, it's a simple API connectivity that so I'm not rewriting an API every single time, because most of the experiences that we want to enable 9 out of 10 times is already on the platform itself. So it's click and drag, configure, commit, done.
And for one-off case where like you just don't like what the platform has,
Mhm.
UI, can you do your own UI?
Yeah. Yeah, you can edit it however you want right on the platform. Like if I don't like this page in particular and I don't want to just like upload my picture and I want to insert an additional consent, or I want to change privacy commitment language, whatever, like that's super straightforward. Log in, make some quick edits, click commit, done.
So I think I mentioned earlier, the IAM team, the engineers themselves are not involved with the day-to-day operation of this, right? We're more advisory consultants, right? So for example, they're coming from the marketing side, right? It's about marketing. They'd like to get from 87% to, a higher number. However, certain fields we're requiring for fraud detection, et cetera. So we need to make sure that we're having those open and honest communications and working that, but it's just a different type of relationship than what you would expect.
So that's our time. As promised, so we'll hang out actually out there for a few minutes if you guys have more questions.
I have one question.
There's one question right
You
here.
said the name of the vendor again you chose?
I think it was Stravosity. If folks are interested in learning about Stravosity, see my bald friend here in the corner. All right, thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it.